History is filled with billionaires, and it's filled with mass murderers. But rarely do these two worlds collide in a single man like they did with Pablo Escobar. Imagine a man so wealthy that he had a monthly budget of $2,500 just for rubber bands, just to hold his physical cash together. Imagine a man who was responsible for 80% of the entire world's cocaine supply, yet was worshipped like a saint by the poor of Medellín. This isn't just a story about drugs. It's a dark psychological study into the fragile line between power and insanity. It's about how a farm boy from a violent, forgotten era in Colombia decided that he wouldn't just live through history, he would break it, rebuild it, and own it. Today, we go beyond the glamorized Narcos TV show. We look at the cold, hard, and bloody reality of the man who became the god of cocaine. To truly understand Pablo, you have to understand La Violencia, the decade of savage civil war in Colombia that stained his childhood. Born in 1949, Pablo grew up in an environment where life was cheap and violence was the only language people spoke. His mother, Himilda, was a schoolteacher who saw his ambition early on. She reportedly told him, "If you do something bad, make sure you do it well." Pablo took that advice to a chilling level. He didn't start with drugs, he started with the dead. He would steal headstones from cemeteries, sand down the names, and resell them to smugglers. It shows a haunting lack of empathy even as a teenager. By his early 20s, he was a professional car thief, but he wanted more. He once kidnapped a Medellín executive and demanded $100,000 in ransom, a king's ransom for a young man in the 70s. But Pablo had a vision that stretched across borders. He looked north, toward the hungry markets of the United States, and saw a nation that was about to fall in love with a white powder. In the mid-70s, cocaine was a luxury niche for the elite in Miami. Pablo saw the potential for a global mass market. He bought his first small plane and personally flew it to the Bahamas. Soon, he wasn't just a street-level dealer, he was the CEO of a global logistics empire. He formed the Medellín Cartel with the Ochoa brothers and the eccentric Carlos Letter. Letter was the genius who bought an entire island, Norman's Cay, and turned it into a high-tech smuggling hub with its own runway. From this island, planes would take off every hour like a lethal airline headed for Florida. The scale was beyond imagination. At his absolute peak, Pablo was smuggling 15 tons of cocaine every single day. To put that in perspective, that's the weight of 2 full school buses made of pure drugs. The money started coming in so fast that even his army of accountants couldn't keep up. They began burying millions in the Colombian countryside and hiding it in the walls of safe houses. Legend has it that even today, there are hundreds of millions of Escobar's dollars buried in plastic drums, rotting away in the soil, lost forever to time. While the U.S. government began to see Pablo as public enemy number 1, the people of the slums saw him as a messiah. Pablo understood a fundamental truth: if you own the people's hearts, the police can never catch you. He built Barrio Pablo Escobar, a neighborhood of 450 houses for people who had lived in city trash dumps. He built over 80 soccer fields, hospitals, and schools. He was a master of propaganda long before he ever ran for office. In 1982, he was actually elected to Colombia's Chamber of Representatives. He wanted total legitimacy. But when the elite of Colombia, led by the Minister of Justice, tried to shame him and expose his criminal roots, Pablo felt a deep, narcissistic humiliation. And a humiliated Pablo Escobar was the most dangerous creature on the planet. The 1980s in Colombia were a literal bloodbath. Pablo's ego was bruised, so he decided to burn the entire system to the ground. His slogan became his brand: Plata o Plomo, take the bribe or take the bullet. When the Supreme Court began discussing extradition to the U.S., the one thing Pablo truly feared, he hired the M19 guerrilla group to storm the Palace of Justice. They burned all the extradition files and murdered 11 Supreme Court justices in broad daylight. But the horror was just beginning. In 1989, he bombed Avianca Flight 203, killing 107 innocent people just to target one politician who wasn't even on board. He bombed the DAS building, killing 63. He was no longer a smuggler, he was a narco-terrorist. He put a bounty on every cop in the city, $1,000 for a dead officer. Over 500 police officers were hunted down in a single year. Medellín became the murder capital of the world. You couldn't walk to the store without checking for car bombs. By 1991, the walls were closing in, but Pablo didn't surrender like a criminal. He negotiated like a king. He agreed to go to prison, but only if it was a prison he built himself. La Catedral was a luxury resort masquerading as a jail. It had a private waterfall, a nightclub, a jacuzzi, and a professional soccer pitch where the national team was forced to play with him. His guards were his own paid hitmen. But the illusion of the peaceful prisoner shattered when it was discovered he was still running the cartel from his cell. He even tortured and murdered 2 of his top lieutenants inside the prison walls over a money dispute. When the government finally gathered the courage to move him to a real military jail, Pablo simply walked out the back door and vanished into the mountain fog. The king was on the run. The final 16 months of Pablo's life were a slow, agonizing descent into paranoia. The DEA, Delta Force, and a mysterious vigilante group called Los Pepes, his own victims seeking revenge, were dismantling his life piece by piece. They burned his properties and killed his associates. Pablo was now a ghost, moving between cold safe houses every night, sleeping on a thin mattress with a pistol under his pillow. On December 2nd, 1993, one day after his 44th birthday, he made a fatal, emotional mistake. He stayed on the phone with his son, Juan Pablo, for too long. The search block triangulated the signal. As they smashed through the door of a middle-class house, Pablo tried to escape across the roof. A barrage of bullets ended the reign of the god of cocaine. The image of his bloody, barefoot body on a dirty roof became the most iconic photo in criminal history. The king was finally dead. Today, Pablo Escobar is a tourist attraction. His grave is a shrine, and the hippos from his private zoo have multiplied into a wild, invasive species that haunts Colombia's rivers, a permanent, living scar of his presence. But the real legacy isn't the wealth or the movies. It's the 4,000 lives lost to his ego. It's the grief of a nation that took decades to heal. Pablo proved that you can buy almost anything with enough plata, but in the end, the price is always paid in plomo. If you found this deep dive into history fascinating, hit the like button and subscribe. We tell the stories that shaped our world, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Let us know in the comments, was Pablo a monster of his own making or a product of a broken system? Until next time, stay curious.